What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some insane battles in the Open Ultra League running two level 50 Hundo Shadow Pokemon that have been buffed this season with Hypno and Girafarig, as well as a third Hundo purely by coincidence. This Pokemon actually doesn't need any XL candies for the Ultra League, and that final Pokemon is Druddigon. Now, I've used both Shadow Hypno and Girafarig together in the Ultra League for years now, and typically they've been very underwhelming in this meta, but my god, they feel so much better this season with that confusion buff. It does also help that I didn't see loads of dark types everywhere today. In previous seasons, you could honestly expect to see a dark type on most teams. It was a very strong typing. Druddigon was also very fun to run, gaining access to Rock Tomb this season, which somehow managed to avoid a nerf. I'm not really sure how, but it was very fun to run, and it's got very quick pacing to Night Slash as well, which of course does have a chance to boost up its attack. Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Do you have any Hundo Shadow Pokemon, and if so, what's your favorite to use in the Go Battle League? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. I'm heading into the first battle, leading Druddigon into Togekiss. So obviously not a great matchup for me, but in the end game, potentially if all shields are down, Rock Tomb could put in some work. Anyways, I'm going to say swap into Shadow Girafarig. Depending on what I saw in the lead, I would swap into different Pokemon. Here they come in with a Belly Bolt. I'm going straight for Psychic Fangs here. Psychic Fangs not going to do too much damage, but if the opponent commits to a farm down, they might need to shield this, as Trailblaze does huge damage, and the opponent, recognizing one confusion now, would get the KO. They're forced to use their energy, which means now we can come in with that Druddigon and go for a full Dragon Tail farm down. Now, obviously, there were a ton of move updates this season, so potentially the opponent doesn't remember about Rock Tomb on Druddigon. So Rock Tomb, gotta be no-shielded. It does big damage, but unfortunately, they do have a Corviknight in the back now. Obviously, the opponent doesn't know my moveset just yet. I did go straight for Psyshock, hoping they might think it's like a Thunder Punch or a Fire Punch, but unfortunately for me, that backfires massively. I'm now going to shield as they full send the payback, and at this point, we are now over farming. I'm still not quite at the energy for a Focus Blast, but potentially I will grab a shield, and I do exactly that. Now, the opponent banks energy. They swap back into Togekiss, but this is fine with me. This is not a Dazzling Gleam. I'm able to tank it, and not only that, I come out with a Rock Tomb loaded. The opponent looks like they're throwing on CMP here. Rock Tomb is going to grab the shield from the Corviknight, and of course, I debuff their attack. Air Cutter does not boost up their attack, and Shadow Hypno is actually fairly bulky here. They're debuffed. Payback does not get the KO, and now Shadow Hypno able to reach a Focus Blast at the last second. Focus Blast gets the KO up against Corviknight, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Druddigon into a Toedscrawl. So this is a neutral matchup here. Unfortunately for me, I can't really go for Rock Tomb as that is going to be resisted. So I'm going to fire off a Night Slash on the CMP tire with a potential wrap. And Night Slash, going to be no-shielded. We do not get the boost. So at this point, I've done a little bit of chip damage. I'm going to swap out, clear that debuff, swap into Shadow Hypno. And the opponent looking to throw another wrap. They throw straight away, giving a full confusion in for free in the process. But now they're going to come in with a Belly Bolt, of course. Debuff in my defense here, gonna make it much easier for them to just commit to a full Sucker Punch farm down, but not before I reach back-to-back Psyshock. So Psyshock number 2 is gonna connect, and with the confusion damage, we do get them into the yellow health range. And of course, Druddigon is going to resist the charge moves here. I'm gonna no-shield this. They fire off the Parabolic Charge, and Druddigon just barely able to reach a Rock Tomb before they do reach another charge move. And actually, they do throw here. They don't commit to the farm down, and now at this point, I'm just gonna save both shields for Shadow Girafarig, hoping we can sweep in the end game. The opponent's going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Tentacruel, so things are now looking quite good for me. I fire off the Psychic Fangs. You could argue potentially expecting a shield. I might as well go for Trailblaze and boost up my attack here, but either way, they're going to clear the debuff, swap back into the Toedscrawl, but it just doesn't really matter as I can still go for the full farm down. All shields are down on the opponent's end. I can just safely shield this up here. They do go for a Scald. Scald does not drop my attack. We can fire off another Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs takes out the Tentacruel from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Druddigon into a Charizard. So at this point, I'm thinking, you know what? Surely they forget about Rock Tomb. So I'm going to go straight for the Rock Tomb. I'm going to no-shield the first charge move. And the opponent is actually still running Dragon Claw. And oh my gosh, I was honestly so excited to nuke a Charizard. And Oh my god, it backfires massively as I just did not expect a Dragon Claw there. So Dragon Claw obviously gets the KO. Obviously, if they're on Air Cutter, we tank that pretty comfortably. At this point, they've come in with a second Dragon Breath user. We've just been nuked. I'm going to shield, and we do correctly respect the damage from an Outrage. Potentially triple Dragon Breath here. They're going to come back in with Charizard, and since they're on Dragon Claw, surely you don't sacrifice Blast Burn, so surely they are going to have just slower pacing. And their final Pokemon, luckily for me, is going to be a Como-O. Of course, we've got double Confusion users. The opponent does correctly no shield that, recognizing they can still reach a charge move. However, I'm going to shield the Clanging Scales, go for the farm down. We come out with another Psychic Fangs loaded because we're so fast to those charge moves now. Psychic Fangs is going to grab the final shield. I'm going to swap out once again, and the opponent is going to throw just before we reach the charge move. Very good timing, but Dragon Claw gets the KO. We can come back in. Confusion, farm down with Shadow Giraffe, and despite getting nuked in that lead matchup with the Druddigon, we're somehow able to claw it back and take that game. But GG's to opponent there into the next battle. We're going to see a Zygarde in the lead. And here, we are going to make the same mistake. I'm going to no-shield this, and the opponent falls into an Outrage. Bro, what am I doing? Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. But anyways, we are going to see our Shadow Hypno coming in. I'm going to fire off the Psyshock. Psyshock is going to be no-shielded by the opponent, and Hypno will be able to tank a Parabolic Charge. I feel like my win condition now is once again putting both shields into my Shadow Giraffe. So we're going to fire off another Psyshock. Psyshock is going to be no shield. I swap into Giraffe, and no, they live with 1 HP and a Dream. At this point, I recognize there's just no point shielding here. This is going to be game over. I can't really fight back from that, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. That was very disappointing. That was one of the first battles I did with this team, by the way. But anyways, into the next battle. Okay, at this point, surely we start using our shields up against Dragon Breath users in the lead. We're going to go for Rock Tomb. Oh, sorry, actually, no, going to bait with a Night Slash there, recognizing we're going to grab a shield anyways. I'm going to swap out there, and I can tank a charge move on the Shadow Hypno before they come in with a Shadow Golurk. So at this point, we fire off the Psyshock. Psyshock is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. Obviously, we could have access to Ice Punch, Shadow Ball potentially. The opponent does use that final shield. I'm now going to wait out my Switch Clock, come back in with that Druddigon. I'm hoping 2 Dragon Tails puts them into Night Slash range. Of course, Night Slash, not the hardest hitting move, but Night Slash does get the KO there. I'm now swapping into Shadow Giraffe straight away. And Giraffe, a lot glassier than the Hypno. I will be shielding here. We can go for a full Confusion farm down. And their final Pokemon is a Shadow Swampert. We've got that Trailblaze for coverage, and Trailblaze, double super effective. It takes out that Shadow Swampert, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I can see Druddigon into Ampharos. So this is a good lead matchup for me, although I do have to be wary. Maybe they're going to farm up to like a Dragon Pulse or something. No, that is not the case. This is only the energy for a Brutal Swing. They actually go for Trailblaze there, which is an interesting play as they're going to swap out anyway, so don't really know why they did that. But either way, we fire off a Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb is going to be no-shielded. I've debuffed their attack. The opponent can go for an Air Cutter. Air Cutter does not boost up their attack, however. So now we can fire off a second Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb number 2, I'm going to get them fairly low, and as well, if they go for another Air Cutter, this just is not going to get the KO as they're double debuffed, and again, they do not get the boost. So at this point, firing off the Night Slash and just looking to grab a shield or deal damage to put them into range where we can Confusion farm them down. And at this point, unfortunately, they do just barely outpace us, and even though they're double debuffed, I am going to shield as Giraffe, like I mentioned, fairly glassy. We can now go for a full farm down here, and let's see what they want to do. They're going to come in with the Ampharos once again, so I'm firing off the Psychic Fangs straight away, and now I'm going to go and commit to a Trailblaze. Psychic Fangs obviously would probably get the KO from this range, however, I might as well boost up my attack for that final Pokemon in the back. They're going to reach a Trailblaze of their own, but it doesn't matter. We get that full farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Blastoise. We're already boosted. We're going for Trailblaze. Trailblaze does big damage there. The opponent has to commit to a farm down, but actually it's Shadow Giraffe that gets the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We see Poliwrath in the lead. So, of course, not a great lead matchup for me. Going to be safe swapping into Shadow Giraffe, and this is about the worst thing we can see as they are going to resist everything we can throw. We go for Trailblaze here. Honestly, I probably should go for Psychic Fangs just because both moves aren't really going to do much damage, but Psychic Fangs is going to drop their defense, meaning when we come back in with Druddigon, potentially, if we double debuff the defense, a Rock Tomb might get the KO. But either way, they go for a foul play there, and the opponent is going to fire off another charge move. Of course, we know they're on foul play now. out. Foul play, not really going to do too much damage. They then swap, but they swap into a Lowland Sand Slash. And honestly, I just don't think we've got a win condition here. Potentially should have gone for Rock Tomb. Not really sure why I didn't. I think I just in the moment I panicked and forgot that they are going to be neutral to rock type damage. But either way, it doesn't really matter. There's not a lot we can do. This time we are going to fire off the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb is going to be shielded. Shadow Hypno does have Focus Blast for coverage, but it's just going to take so long to get there, even with a buff to the energy generation. But they give us a potential win condition here. They swap back into Poliwrath. We're now going to come in with that Shadow Hypno. They do not get the debuff with the Scald. We commit to a farm down, but they do just barely reach another charge move. This is just going to be an Icy Wind, but it does debuff my attack, and correctly they come back in with the Mana Buzz. I can go for Focus Blast, but with debuffed, it doesn't actually do that much damage. The opponent's going to swap back into their Sand Slash. I can now swap, fire off the Rock Tomb, but it's just too little too late, unfortunately for me, as the opponent can fire off an Ice Punch. Ice Punch gets the KO, one more Shadow Claw, gets that farm down, and unfortunately I do lose that game. But GG's up home there into the next battle. You see Druddigon into Zygarde. So at this point, we should have learned our lesson. If they do farm up to 5, I will be respecting the damage. However, that is just 4 Dragon Tails. So worst case scenario, it's a crunch. They actually go for Bulldoze there. So I'm going to swap into my Shadow Giraffe Rig. And again, this is just going to be another Bulldoze potentially, but I actually shield, and it is a crunch there. So interesting that they are on Bulldoze and crunch. Of course, neither charge moves are going to hit too hard in neutral situations. So I feel like you should at least run Outrage or Earthquake there, but either way, it doesn't really matter. They're going to go for a Brutal Swing, getting the KO. Of course, Trailblaze didn't really do too much damage, but it should put them into range where 2 Night Slashes will get the KO. So we fire off the first one. Night Slash is going to connect, and we are going to fire off one more Dragon Tail, go for Night Slash number 2. Night Slash gets the KO there. We're now going to swap into our Shadow Hypno, and the opponent just swaps out immediately, but that was not the best play because they've got Tentacruel in the back. We fire off the Psyshock. Psyshock is going to grab the first shield from the opponent. Likewise, I'm also going to shield. What I don't want to do is put myself into farm down range. Now I'm going to fire off the next charge move. Honestly, at this point, I was thinking maybe I should just commit to a full farm down, come out with back-to-back charge moves loaded. But either way, we do throw, and luckily for me, the opponent does actually end up shielding there. I'm going to bank the Psyshock, swap into Druddigon, and I'm able to reach a Night Slash. Night Slash is going to connect, of course. Night Slash puts them into range where certainly a Psyshock will get the KO. So we're going to win CMP with that Shadow Hypno. Psyshock obviously taking out the Zygarde from this range, and now we can just commit to a Confusion farm down up against the Tentacruel, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Druddigon into Primeapes. Of course, not a great matchup. My charge moves are resisted. I swap into Shadow Giraffe Rig, and I'm met with a Togekiss. Now, of course, this is a matchup where in the 2-shield scenario, we can very comfortably win this, as now we debuff the defense. There's just not a lot they can do. So I'm going to shield this as they do go for an Aura Sphere. Unfortunately, Aura Sphere is going to be neutral due to our part normal typing, but it doesn't really matter. We fire off a second Psychic Fangs, and we are going to grab the first shield. At this point, I'm actually going to shield this, though I do need switch advantage. The opponent swaps back into Primeape, but if they just go for a Rage Fist is single resisted due to that normal typing, and as a result, I'm able to reach the Psychic Fangs, grab the final shield, and debuff their defense. Now, of course, they are boosted. A Rage Fist is going to do super effective damage into Shadow Hypno, but we are bulky. We can tank it. I'm committing to that farm down, and their final Pokemon is going to be Unova Stunfisk. So I'm going straight for a Psyshock here. Psyshock is going to connect. The opponent is not going to look to try and make a catch just yet. I, of course, have no shields remaining, but I can tank a Mud Bomb fairly comfortably. I do wait a turn just to make sure I see that Thunder Shock going through. Psyshock is going to connect, of course. The opponent swaps back into Togekiss just to give me more energy on the Druddigon. And Druddigon, not the bulkiest Pokemon ever, but it doesn't really matter. Even if they reach back-to-back Mud Bombs, it's not getting the KO. I'm going for one Dragon Tail first, firing off the Night Slash. Night Slash gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Druddigon into Runerigus. So, this is definitely where we want to see it for this team. Of course, Giraffe Rig is actually going to be okay into Runerigus because unless they've got Brutal Swing, we can actually resist the Shadow Claws and Shadow Ball combination. Rock Tomb is going to do some decent damage. But anyways, I'm going to no-shield this. They fire off the Shadow Ball, but then they make a catch, and they catch onto, honestly, the worst Pokemon for this team, a Pangoro. So, at this point, I'm swapping out straight away. I know I can tank a single Night Slash, so I'm going to no no-shield the first one just in case they boost. However, what that does is put me into perfect farm down range. I've got to hope that since I no-shielded, the opponent might just let this go through as well, and they do. So that is huge for me, but they've still got a Pangoro with a lot of energy and a Runarigas. Both Pokemon my Shadow Hypno doesn't really want to deal with. I no-shield the first charge move. They are going to not throw the charge move there. And at this point, I realize it will be game over. I can shield this if I want to, but the opponent is going to go for a Rock Tomb, permanently debuffing my attack there. I recognize there's just no chance for me, so I'm going to allow them to fully farm me down. And unfortunately, I do get completely destroyed in that battle. But GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, I'm going to see a Skeledirge in the lead. So we are going to commit to a Rock Tomb here. I don't want to throw straight away just in case they opt for an extra Incinerate. I'm going to shield, and they do full send a Shadow Ball. So at this point, in trying to throw on good timing, I do actually farm over 100 energy, so not really ideal for me. But Rock Tomb, unfortunately, just barely misses out on getting the KO. However, I do recognize this is not going to be a Shadow Ball. It's just a resisted Torch Song, but they swap into Florages. So I'm going to swap out straight away into Shadow Giraffe Rig, and they've got a Belly Bolt, but they're not on Sucker Punch, so going to be faster to boost up the defense, but they are not going to be able to fully farm me down here with the Thundershock damage after landing a Parabolic Charge. So at this point, I'm going to fire off a Trailblaze, recognizing they might just no-shield this, and they do exactly that. So this one, of course, they're forced to throw. I'm going to come in straight away with my Shadow Hypno. Maybe should have come in with a Druddigon there and look to debuff their attack straight away. But either way, we can no-shield the first charge move. They do fire off a Trailblaze, looking to boost up their attack, and then they throw on CMP. If this is a Moonblast, it might KO, but it's just the Trailblaze. And now we can fire off the Psyshock. Psyshock is going to connect. It does decent damage there. We can now fire off a second Psyshock, and if the opponent isn't quick to react here, I'm going to come in with the Druddigon, go for the Rock Tomb. We've got so much loaded energy. Rock Tomb, of course, from this range gets the KO up against Florages, and now we can just fire off a Night Sash. And Night Sash, likewise, will get the KO from this range up against the Belly Bolt, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we can see Druddigon into Steelix. So, depending on the fast move, this could be a good or bad matchup. They're on Dragon Tail, so I'm going to swap out straight away. We swap into Shadow Hypno, and we're met with a Gyarados. Of course, expecting Gyarados to be running Crunch for coverage. I fire off the Psyshock. Obviously, the threat of a Thunder Punch is going to grab a shield there, but likewise, Psyshock's still going to do quite a lot of damage here. These confusions are chunky, and I'm able to reach a second Psyshock. The opponent going to be forced to double shield if they want to maintain alignment, and the opponent is committing to that full Dragon Breath farm down. At this point, I'm just going to no-shield this, expecting a Crunch here. We have seen Crunch already. It would be very interesting if they run Crunch and Outrage, but obviously I'm expecting a Aqua Tail there. We can go for a Night Sash. Night Sash gets the KO from that range, and the opponent has their own Confusion user. However, unfortunately for me, this isn't ideal, as Dynamic Punch is going to hit for neutral damage, and they can spam it fairly quickly. So at this point, I'm going to shield this. I recognize by the time I reach a second Trailblaze, unfortunately, it won't quite get the KO from this range, despite the fact that I am boosted. So instead, I'm now going to look to overfarm in this matchup here. But then I swap out into Druddigon. I don't really know why I did that. I'm going to fire off the Night Sash. I'm looking to hopefully get a boost here. And Night Sash does actually give me the boost. And now this next Night Sash is going to do respectable damage. Of course, the opponent is going to commit to a full farm down here. I was hoping that maybe we could go and fire off the charge straight away there, and the opponent might not expect us to come in and throw immediately, but they do just throw straight away. And of course, from this range, Earthquake gets the KO, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, you can see Druddigon into another Steelix. So once again, going to stay in initially just to check the fast move, but actually, they're going to swap out, and it is going to be a Gyarados once again. So same first two Pokemon here. I'm going to no-shield this as we can tank a Crunch, and the fact they swapped out, maybe they are on Thunderfang instead. But either way, Rock Tomb gets the one-shot up against the Gyarados. And let's see, the opponent is going to come back in with that Steelix, and they are on Thunderfang. So maybe could have reached a Night Slash there, but I mean, it doesn't really help. It doesn't do too much damage. Possibly could have banked it before swapping out, however. And this time they're on Crunch, so different moveset on the Steelix. Either way, I'm full sending a Focus Blast, and Focus Blast connects. It does big damage. They do reach a charge move here. I don't know what's in the back, so I am just going to shield. And unfortunately for me, it's just a Psyche Fangs, which I could have tanked. And they've got a Como-O in the back. Now, whilst I do have a shield here, this is a little bit awkward because they're going to be very fast to get to the charge moves. I'm just going to go straight for a Psychic Fangs here, looking to debuff the defense. Psychic Fangs is going to grab that final shield. but they're still fairly healthy here. The opponent is going to go for an upper hand, but we're able to tank it, and as a result, we land the confusion. One more Dragon Tail gets that farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. You can see Virizion in the lead. So, I'm going to swap out straight away into my Shadow Giraffe rig, and the opponent is going to fire off a charge move immediately. This is fine with me. Worst case scenario, it's a Leaf Blade. It's actually a Sacred Sword, which doesn't do too much damage, and they swap straight away into Rhyperior. At this point, I probably should have just gone for a bait there, expecting to grab a shield. Most people probably do recognize that Giraffe rig does have Trailblaze these days, although you are very unlikely to see it in the Ultra League, so potentially I might have just landed that. But either way, they do farm me down, unfortunately, before I reach a Psychic Fangs as well. And of course, Breaking Swipe guaranteed to debuff my attack. However, it's not going to do that much damage considering how much energy it does cost. So I recognize, even though I don't get the KO there, I can live this. So I'm just going to no shield. I'm going to swap out into the Shadow Hypno there. And their final Pokemon is Heliolisk. But we can go for a Psyshock here. Psyshock is going to connect a no shield for some reason before they boost up the defense. And now we can just safely shield this up. They go for Parabolic Charge, but we've put them into range where we can get the perfect farm down, coming out with a ton of loaded energy, and the opponent comes back in with Rhyperior just to be fully farmed down. I go for one Confusion. I've got back-to-back Psyshocks here. Psyshock surely from this range will be getting the KO. Super effective up against this Virizion, and it does exactly that. So, GG's to the opponent there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Druddigon into Baxcalibur. So, battle of the Dragon-type Pokemon. Of course, they should be outpacing me to a potential Icy Wind before I get to a Rock Tomb. Maybe you could argue I should just go for a Night Slash, expecting them to shield the first move anyways. And here I am actually going to do that. I'm going to go for the Night Slash, but I am now debuffed. Either way, Night Slash is going to be shielded anyways. And now I'm committing to a Rock Tomb. Not certain if Night Slash would get the KO from that range, but we are going to see the opponent's going to swap into Cobalion. That is fine with me. Of course, they would resist everything on the Druddigon, but I'm just going to swap into my Shadow Hypno. The opponent going to go and full send a Stone Edge, but now we can full send a Focus Blast. This is super effective damage. Confusion's already chunked. Focus Blast gets the KO there. They come back in with that Baxcalibur. They do overfarm, but they're going to throw off a charge move. Of course, Icy Wind. Actually, no, never mind. I was going to say, of course, it gets the KO from that range, but it actually doesn't. They're going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Lantern, and maybe I should have come in with my Druddigon first and gone for a Rock Tomb, but either way, I'm going to shield the first charge move as they fire off the Surf. I'm now going straight for Trailblaze. Trailblaze is going to hit for super effective damage. It boosts up my attack there. They will reach a last second charge move, but I can tank a Surf from its range. I'm going to come out with a Psychic Fangs loaded for the Baxcalibur that comes back in, and of course, we're boosted. Psychic Fangs gets the KO regardless, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. I can see Druddigon into a Malamar. So, this is definitely where I need to see it with this team. Of course, they are going to triple resist the Confusion damage. I'm going to go straight for a Rock Tomb. That's quite nice that they do allow me to get there before they throw the first charge move. And Rock Tomb is going to debuff their attack. Now, they've farmed up a ton of energy. I'm actually going to respect a Hyper Beam, and they full send it as well, which is crazy. They're now going to swap into a Shadow Dusknoir. I'm going straight for Night Slash. Night Slash going to be shielded by the opponent. We now swap into Shadow Giraffe Rig. And of course, I am going to resist the Ghost type damage. They have to go for Dynamic Punch, and they do, and unfortunately, that does put me into a single Astonished farm down range. Trailblaze also just barely misses out on getting the KO there. That is agonizingly close, which means now, unfortunately, I do not have switch advantage. I come in with that Shadow Hypno. They actually come in with the Belly Bolt here just to catch a triple resisted Psyshock. Really nice play by the opponent. Psyshock, of course, not doing much damage. I'm going to bank another charge move, swap into Druddigon, and I am actually able to reach a Night Slash here. Night Slash gets the KO. They do just let it go down, but honestly, I don't think I'm going to be able to take out the Belly Bolt. I need to reach a Rock Tomb here before they farm me down, but we're just not getting there in time. So we settle for the Night Slash, but what this does now do is allow the opponent to farm me down, and all they need to do here is just full send a Zap Cannon. Honestly, from this range, Parabolic Charge would get the KO, but Zap Cannon just guarantees it, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there, very well played, catching that Side Shock onto the Malamar. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Corviknight in the lead. So a bit awkward for me. Honestly, I probably do want to see it here, however, so I'm going to go straight for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb, of course, is going to hit for neutral damage. They actually shield that up there, which is quite interesting. I'm still not going to bother shielding. They do full send a payback, but that's fine with me. We can now go for another Rock Tomb here. They do have to commit to another payback, otherwise Air Cutter just won't get the KO from that range. We've grabbed the shield advantage. We've double debuffed their attack here. If they go for Air Cutter, it's not going to KO, so we can now commit to another Rock Tomb, and this is going to get Corviknight extremely low. And as well, they're going to be triple debuffed, meaning I can come in with the Shadow Hypno. I don't care if they full send a payback. As you're going to see, payback just doesn't really do much damage. Then I come in with Shadow for Alligator. We can go straight for a Side Shock here, and of course, Side Shock is going to connect there as the opponent does allow it to be no shielded. We can just no-shield this as well, come in with our Shadow Giraffe Rig, commit one shield, and then go for a full Confusion Farm down. Giraffe Rig, of course, going to resist the Shadow Claw damage, so not taking much fast move pressure. We shield up the Hydro Cannon, and let's see what they want to do. The opponent comes back in with Corviknight just to be fully farmed down there. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Belly Bolt, but once again, not on Sucker Punch, so minimal fast move damage. We go for Psychic Fangs first. They are going to shield that up, so now I'm going to fire off a Trailblaze, boosting up my attack there, dealing big damage in the process. I can just safely shield up the Parabolic Charge here. You can see Confusion's doing huge damage. I could have settled for a Side Shock, but we've got the energy for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze gets the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there into the next battle. You see Druddigon into a Shadow Giratina. So, this is a neutral matchup for me. I will outpace them significantly to the Night Slashes, but the opponent is going to swap into a Steelix. So, once again, coming in with the Shadow Hypno, I'm going to no-shield this, and the opponent is going to full send an Earthquake, but I can now full send a Focus Blast in return. Are they going to respect the damage? No, it does big damage there, but they do reach another charge, and this could already be another Earthquake. It is the Earthquake, and unfortunately, we do end up losing the zero shield scenario, but Giraffe Rig not having the worst matchup up against the Giratina. We come in with the Druddigon, we get the farm down, but they've got Empoleon in the back, and unfortunately, Empoleon is going to be very problematic for me. Luckily for me, I actually didn't see very many Empoleon at all in the Ultra League when I did these battles. I'm going to shield this Charge Move here as they go for a Hydro Cannon. I'm now going to go for a Psychic Fangs. I'm hoping I can reach back-to-back Psychic Fangs before they do throw a Charge Move of their own, but they do throw just before we get there. I'm going to call a bait with an Ancient Power, but it is the Dragon Claw. It gets the KO, and at this point, it's going to be game over. I can commit to a full farm down. It doesn't really matter. The opponent reaching another Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw gets the KO, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see a Shadow Drift Blimp in the lead. So this is an okay matchup for me. If they're on Hex, I would go for Night Slash on the CMP type, but they're on Astonish, so I'm going to go for that Rock Tomb straight away. Rock Tomb is going to win CMP, and it's going to debuff their attack. I'm going to shield up the Icy Wind there, and I'm going to look to go for another Rock Tomb, but the opponent actually swaps out into Licky Licky. So I'm going to come in with the Shadow Hypno. Of course, they could be on Shadow Ball, and Shadow Ball is going to hit for super effective damage. They go straight for that Shadow Ball there, but this is not another Shadow Ball. It's just a Body Slam. Body Slam got buffed this season, but Shadow Hypno just barely able to tank it and reach a Focus Blast. And Focus Blast, once again, gets the KO there. The opponent comes back in with that Shadow Drift Blimp. I'm actually going to come in with my Giraffe Rig as they do now have the energy for an Icy Wind, and I don't want my Rock Tomb to be caught onto a Pokemon, especially if it is going to be resisted. So Icy Wind, I'm going to debuff my attack there, but that's fine with me. The opponent is going to bank some energy there, swapping into a Feraligatr, but I can fire off the Night Slash. Night Slash is unfortunately not going to get a boost. I'm not really sure why I didn't go for Rock Tomb there. Rock Tomb would be quite handy because now, unfortunately, the opponent can commit to a full farm down just before we get to the charge move. And at this point, I'm committing to a full Confusion Farm down. We've got back-to-back Side Shocks here, so I'm going to fire off the first one. First one is going to be shielded, and luckily for me, of course, debuffing their defense. Psychic Fangs, oh, I'm getting the wrong moves here. Psychic Fangs, not Side Shock, is going to get the KO there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the final battle of this video, leading into a Shadow Swamp, but for some reason they swap into Skeledirge, and that is absolutely fine with me. I can now off a Rock Tomb straight away as they are one turn behind, so that is actually good charge move timing for me, and now I can tank even a Disarming Voice or a Shadow Ball. They do bait with a Torch Song, don't really care about that. We can now go for another Rock Tomb. We've already seen Rock Tomb unfortunately doesn't quite get the KO from that range, but they do end up double shielding. So at this point, I'm going to use my first shield. They do bait again with another Torch Song, but it doesn't really matter. I can still outpace them to the next Rock Tomb, and from this range, Rock Tomb will be taking out the Skeledirge. They're going to come back in with that Shadow Swampert. I'm swapping into my Shadow Hypno, and unfortunately, they do have a Corviknight in the back. Now, this is going to be awkward for me. I'm going to no-shield this. I know I can live a payback, but it does put me into perfect farm down range. Of course, we've now got the energy for the Focus Blast. It does decent damage there, but they can commit to that farm down. At this point, I'm going to sacrifice my Drodagon here. Air Cutter actually might not quite get the KO here, so I'm going to no-shield. It doesn't KO, so I swap into Shadow Giraffe Rig. The opponent is going to go and fire off another charge move. They might bait. They probably will bait here, and they do bait with the Air Cutter, but they swap back into Shadow Swampert. We've got the energy for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze gets the one shot there as it's double super effective, and with that boost, Confusion gets the farm down before they reach a payback, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.